Uncle?
So, the Blue Spirit. I wonder who could be behind that mask.
What are you doing here?
I was just about to ask you the same thing. What do you plan to do now that you've found the Avatar's bison? Keep it locked in our new apartment? Should I go put on a pot of tea for him?
First I have to get it out of here.
And then what? You never think these things through. This is exactly what happened when you captured the Avatar at the North Pole. You had him, and then you had nowhere to go.
I would have figured something out.
No! If his friends hadn't found you, you would have frozen to death.
I know my own destiny, Uncle.
Is it your own destiny? Or is it a destiny someone else has tried to force on you?
Stop it, Uncle. I have to do this.
I'm begging you, Prince Zuko. It's time for you to look inward and begin asking yourself the big questions. Who are you? And what do you want?
The Chosen One archetype is one of the most common, tropes in writing, but I eat it up every time, especially when stories like to play around with it. Destiny is a word you hear a lot in Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I want to look at two characters that you probably know very well, Aang and Zuko, and see how that trope relates to these two. I think we all, Aang and Zuko's stories both have a lot of parallels to them, but I wanted to look at it through the lens of destiny and how these characters operate through their perceived and the destinies that are forced upon them by their surrounding environment. At the beginning of the story, of course, we see these two at complete opposite ends. We have Aang, who has just run away from his responsibilities, his destiny as being the Avatar, and getting frozen into an iceberg, whereas Zuko is determined, persistent, and headstrong in trying to fulfill his destiny of capturing the Avatar. Both are burdened by their own destinies, and each handle it and cope with it in ways that I think also align with their bending styles. Let's take a look at Aang. The Wind, carefree. He wants to be a kid. He wants to go on these childish adventures, and that gives him a lot of open-mindedness towards things, but at the same time it also leads to negligence, and that negligence can have some unforeseen consequences, like the burning of Kyoshi Island. Zuko, on the other hand, is filled with self-hatred, with passion and energy just directed at the wrong place, much like fire. About trying to drive energy, about creating energy. This, of course, leads to not just his self-destruction, but the destruction of his surroundings, and it makes him blind to the present world around him. And while these two are at the opposite ends of this destiny spectrum, their convergence, their inevitable convergence, is very similar. Character arcs, just like in real life, I feel should not be linear. They should have their up and downs. There should be some regression, but then they bounce back. And both of these characters in their arcs have that. These mostly come into play at book 2 and reach their height at, what would you know it, the crossroads of destiny. Which, of course, we can easily associate with Zuko, but I think we should talk more about Aang here. Aang becomes more determined to try and master the Avatar state. Albeit some attempts are more successful than others, like that one Earth Kingdom general who tried to, put his friends in danger to make him angry, which led to a not so desirable result. And Aang during this time also is desperately trying to find an earthbending teacher. Really, he has to be forced on this singular pathway towards becoming the Avatar, as the Fire Nation and the world and his environment slowly their grip tightens, and Aang is more and more forced into a certain pathway. Zuko has been double exiled at this point, and from the Fire Nation after a small and unpleasant reunion with his sister Azula, and he is naturally infuriated by this and decides that he needs some time alone from his uncle Iroh. And we get that wonderful episode, Zuko Alone, and unlike Aang, where the world is kind of waiting for him to fulfill this destiny, Zuko's supposed destiny is all self-imposed. It's all a perceived notion for him that he needs to fulfill. No one is really requiring him. Even the person, his father, who sent him on this quest, is not even really expecting him, nor does he care for him to finish it. And so that's kind of where we see this opposites happen, where you have Aang, who wants more agency, who wants to just be a kid, as the world restricts him and makes his choice fewer and fewer, whereas with Zuko, he's given so much freedom and so much agency to do what he wants with his life, that is almost like this sort of paralysis that he comes across. And of course, all of the fevers that he gets from doing anything morally good. These two roads of destiny cross eventually underneath the city of Ba Sing Se, where if we were graphing these characters' progression towards their destiny, it's going up and down like a seismic graph. Aang is dealing with the guru to master his avatar state, and the guru is like, you need to let go of earthly attachments. And Aang's like, sick. And when he imagines earthly attachments, he imagines Katara, and he's like, oh no, wait. So while Aang is dealing with that, Zuko, on the other hand, is kind of dealing with his sister, basically putting everything that he ever wanted on a silver platter for him to rejoin forces. Zuko has been making some good decisions lately, and Azula definitely does not like it when other people around her are making sound decisions. At this point, it's safe to say that both these characters actually take sizable steps toward their destinies. Aang accepts that he needs to let go of Katara to enter the Avatar state, and Zuko realizes that he doesn't need his father's acceptance to oh wait. Okay, so this is what I was talking about earlier with like people making mistakes, and how both these characters actually, like Aang tries to get into the Avatar state and successfully does so until, of course, Azula severs that connection, whereas Zuko, even though he made the choice he did, he's still just as lost and uncertain as he was because he betrayed his uncle. And so both of these characters are parallel in their descent away from their respective destinies. Aang even at one point just goes like, I need to redeem myself. I need my honor back. And it's just like,
I need to redeem myself. I need my honor back.
He copied my whole fucking flow! Word for word, bar for bar!
In Avatar, reincarnation cycles are a huge thing, stressed by the fact that the Avatar cycle is like an actual reincarnation, and of course it is stressed more with the comparisons between Sozin and Roku's story versus Aang and Zuko's relationship. And both of these characters throughout the series have struggled with their own destinies, the responsibilities they feel have been placed on them by the world.
If a fish lives its whole life in this river, does he know the river's destiny? No! Only that it runs on and on, out of his control. He may follow where it flows, but he cannot see the end. He cannot imagine the ocean.
As both these characters start to converge in Book 3, I think Zhang's words from Book 1 kind of start to sink in a little bit more. While Zuko learns that he doesn't need his father's approval, that's not what really makes him happy, that he can't give him his honor back, and the only one that can do that is him. Aang goes through something similar, particularly in the show's finale. While Aang's destiny is a little bit more concrete because of like given spiritual rules that like the Avatar has to maintain balance in the world, Aang still struggles to try and make it his own, becoming his own road, like paving his own road to his responsibilities. And particularly when the finale of the show, where Aang is like, I don't really want to kill the Fire Lord, in all of his previous incarnations, including the airbending one, are like, dude, you gotta off him. Like, he's gotta go. And so Aang still perseveres, and that's where you get the whole line, Eternally learns energy bending to finally like step into that role the way that he wants to. It makes being the Avatar what he believes it should be. And yes, while Aang had less agency than Zuko, I still feel like both stories were very much of the expectations that the world had for them. Like, Zuko still had responsibilities of becoming the Fire Lord and ensuring an era of peace, and both stepped up to their responsibilities. And like, yes, like those were going to happen, and you could say destiny was set for these characters, but they were able to choose the way in which they got there. And I think that applies to real life too. Like, we can't choose our own like environment that we're born into, and there are a lot of factors in life that are outside of our control. But I think the important thing is that like the things that we can control, we just got to make the best of what we can do and to make it our own. That's all I got. Have a good one.